Jay Blades has been charged with engaging in controlling and coercive behavior against his estranged wife.
Among television audiences across Britain, Jay Blades became more than a presenter. He became a presence. A calm, smiling figure in a dark apron, surrounded by old clocks, faded toys, and broken memories waiting to be reborn. For years, he was the comforting heart of The Repair Shop, a series that transformed the act of restoration into something spiritual. Viewers were drawn to his warmth, his laughter, and his way of listening. He made people feel seen, even through a television screen. Yet behind that easy charm and the careful polish of BBC production, something was quietly shifting, something heavy. The same smile that invited viewers into his world began to fade, and soon enough, fans noticed his absence. Rumors spread online, social media lit up with worry, and suddenly the man who once seemed untouchable was surrounded by uncertainty. What really happened to Jay Blades? And how did one of the most uplifting shows on television end up being marked by heartbreak and controversy? When The Repair Shop first aired in 2017, few could have predicted its impact. At a time when most television leaned toward competition and chaos, this small, quiet program did the opposite. No scores, no prizes. Just a workshop filled with experts and the sound of saws, brushes, and gentle laughter. The premise was simple yet powerful. Ordinary people brought in family heirlooms that had been damaged by time, and the craftspeople worked to bring them back to life. But what made it magical was not the repair itself. It was the emotion behind it. The tears of an elderly man hearing his late wife's music box play again. The relief on a daughter's face when her father's clock ticked once more. It wasn't just television. It was therapy. And at the center of it all was Jay Blades, guiding the stories with calm authority and kindness. His steady presence grounded the series. He wasn't just a host, but a bridge between the audience and the artisans. Jay's journey to that role was anything but smooth. Before television, he lived a life of hardship and resilience. Born and raised in Hackney, London, Jay grew up in a working-class environment where opportunities were scarce. He faced learning difficulties that went undiagnosed until adulthood, and often found himself drifting through jobs just to make ends meet. But his hands, they were always busy, always creating. He discovered a gift for furniture restoration, a skill that would eventually change his life. That love for craftsmanship became his escape, his way of bringing order to a world that often felt broken. When he was chosen to front The Repair Shop, Jay represented something real, a man who had rebuilt himself piece by piece, just like the antiques on his workbench. Audiences immediately connected with him. His accent, his sincerity, his everyman charm stood out in a landscape of polished presenters. There was nothing artificial about Jay. He spoke with authenticity and empathy, turning the show into a celebration of both craft and compassion. But what made The Repair Shop so unique wasn't just the skill, it was the emotion. Each episode carried a sense of reverence for the past, a reminder that the things we keep often hold the people we've lost. Jay understood that instinctively. His reactions were never forced. His joy and tears mirrored those of the guests. For millions of viewers, he wasn't a TV host, he was the soul of the show. As The Repair Shop grew into a cultural phenomenon, so too did Jay's fame. He was invited to royal events, honored for his community work, and even awarded an MBE. His memoir, Making It, revealed the pain of his past and the strength that helped him rise above it. He spoke openly about his struggles with mental health, homelessness, and racism, endearing himself even more to the public. The man who fixed furniture was also fixing himself, and in doing so, he inspired a nation. The BBC capitalized on his popularity, launching spin-offs and specials, from The Repair Shop, a royal visit to Jay Blades, Learning to Read at 51, which offered fans deeper glimpses into his personal life and growth. But as Jay's star rose, so did the pressure. Success came with an invisible cost. Behind the camera, there were whispers of exhaustion, burnout, and creative disagreements. The cozy, slow-paced environment that made The Repair Shop beloved also demanded emotional labor, not just from the craftspeople, but from Jay himself. Each story carried weight. Each tear shed by a guest took its toll. Over time, maintaining that level of empathy became harder. Sources close to the production described a man stretched thin, balancing fame, family, and personal commitments. For someone like Jay, whose identity was built around connection and care, the boundaries began to blur, and slowly the cheerful presenter began to disappear. The first signs came quietly. Jay started missing certain promotional appearances. Then, episodes aired without him. Online, fans asked questions. Where's Jay? Is he okay? The BBC remained tight-lipped, issuing short, polite statements about scheduling changes and new directions. But behind those words, insiders claimed, were deeper problems. One involved tensions within the production team. As the show expanded, creative control became a point of friction. Jay had always wanted the repair shop to stay true to its roots, about people, not profit. Yet, as the network pushed for more celebrity additions and higher production value, that simplicity began to fade. Some crew members allegedly felt that the heart of the show was being lost. For Jay, who built his reputation on sincerity, this shift was difficult to stomach. At the same time, his personal life was under immense strain. Fame had opened doors, but it also magnified private struggles. His marriage faced challenges, and his public openness about mental health meant that every low point became a headline. The same public that once praised his honesty now dissected his every word. There were rumors, speculation, and relentless pressure to maintain the perfect image of the nation's handyman. It was as though the gentle craftsman who once restored forgotten treasures had become a product himself, polished, branded, and expected to perform endlessly. And then, something happened that no one saw coming, a personal crisis that shook Jay deeply. Reports later suggested that he had taken time away from the show to focus on his mental health and family. Close friends described him as exhausted, worn down by the weight of expectations. It wasn't one dramatic incident that ended his run on the repair shop. It was years of emotional accumulation. The man who spent his life fixing broken things had simply run out of strength to fix himself. Still, in the public eye, Jay remained graceful. He never lashed out or blamed anyone. His last appearances on the repair shop were filled with his usual warmth, but attentive viewers noticed the change. The slower smile, the quieter tone. When he finally stepped back, it wasn't with anger, but with acceptance. Sometimes, he hinted in an interview, you need to take time to repair yourself. To his fans, it felt like the end of an era, the loss of something gentle and good in a world that rarely slows down. But that wasn't the whole story. There were undercurrents no one talked about publicly. Controversies surrounding production politics, disagreements about pay, and creative differences that caused rifts behind the scenes. Some crew members reportedly felt undervalued, while others claimed Jay had become too distant, too busy with other projects. The BBC's internal restructuring also changed the show's direction, focusing on efficiency and output rather than emotion and authenticity. What was once a heartfelt community workshop had begun to feel like a machine. For someone like Jay, that transformation must have been devastating. The show that once mirrored his values no longer reflected the same warmth, and so quietly, he walked away. Even after his departure, Jay's influence lingered. Reruns of The Repair Shop continued to comfort viewers, his voice and laughter echoing through countless homes. People still turn to those old episodes for calm, for the feeling of kindness that television rarely provides anymore. Yet, as his public appearances dwindled, fans couldn't help but feel something missing, the presence of a man who once reminded them that everything broken could be made whole again. But behind the calm surface of the BBC's official statements, something darker was brewing. Reports hinted at disagreements escalating beyond creative frustration, whispers of breaches of trust, internal investigations, and reputational fallout. Though much of it remained unconfirmed, the tension was undeniable. Anderson Cooper even referenced Jay's story in a broader discussion about celebrity burnout and authenticity, noting how public personas often hide private pain. The image of Jay Blades, the man who could fix anything, was suddenly complicated by the realization that even he wasn't immune to breaking. By the time the news of his full exit reached the press, It was clear that the decision wasn't purely personal. There were multiple layers: exhaustion, conflict, and changing priorities within the network. What had started as a gentle, hopeful series had become a symbol of how fame, pressure, and the machinery of television can wear down even the most genuine of souls. And for Jay Blades, it marked not just the end of a job, but the end of a chapter that defined him. The story of the repair shop is, at its heart, a story about healing, of giving broken things a second chance. But what happens when the healer himself needs repair? What happens when the craftsman who gave so much of himself finally decides to step away from the workbench? As viewers mourned his quiet disappearance, few realized just how much he had sacrificed behind that comforting smile. Jay's exit wasn't just about leaving a show. It was about reclaiming a life. Before we uncover the full truth about why his career truly ended, the deeper tensions, the decisions that forced his hand, and where he stands today, we must look closer at what the repair shop built, how it changed lives, and why its heart stopped beating the moment Jay Blades stepped away. When the repair shop first appeared on British television, it offered something profoundly simple: a slow, quiet antidote to a noisy world. But over time, success changes everything. The show's growing popularity meant higher expectations, tighter schedules, and more external involvement. As viewership climbed into the millions, the BBC began to see the program not just as heartfelt television, but as a powerful brand. With that came corporate hands trying to shape something that was once organic. Those who worked closely with Jay Blades noticed the difference. The once relaxed, intimate environment of the barn began to feel more like a production set than a workshop. The pressure to deliver perfect emotional moments on cue was mounting, and for someone as authentic as Jay, that shift didn't sit well. He had always believed that genuine emotion can't be manufactured, that it comes naturally when people are truly cared for. But television doesn't always care about authenticity. It cares about ratings. Jay's dedication to honesty made him beloved by audiences, but occasionally difficult for producers who wanted more control. There were discussions about changing the show's tone, introducing bigger celebrity episodes, and streamlining repairs for filming efficiency. Jay pushed back, arguing that the repair shop wasn't meant to be a spectacle. It was meant to be a reflection of humanity, ordinary people, ordinary stories, extraordinary care. This friction grew quietly, out of sight from the public. Yet to those within the workshop, the tension was palpable. It was as if two visions for the show were colliding, one rooted in sincerity, the other in strategy. And slowly, Jay found himself caught in the middle. At the same time, Jay's life outside the workshop was changing too. Fame had given him opportunities, but it also brought expectations that weighed heavily. Every word he said, every move he made, was now scrutinized online. The same social media that had once celebrated his kindness now became a place where rumors thrived. Some speculated about feuds, others about personal struggles. What many didn't realize was that Jay had been quietly open about his battle with mental health for years. He had spoken about facing depression and burnout, about needing time away to find balance. But the machine of television doesn't stop for anyone, not even its most beloved star. Friends of Jay later said that he tried time and again to hold things together. He loved the show deeply and the people who worked with him. Yet as episodes piled up and creative changes mounted, he began to feel disconnected from the heart of what he helped build. There were moments when he'd walk into the barn and feel like a guest rather than a host. The family atmosphere that once defined the show had shifted. Crew rotations, new producers, tighter scripts, all the quiet details that viewers never saw, made the work less personal and more procedural. The result was subtle but unmistakable. The warmth that once flowed so naturally began to feel rehearsed. And Jay, who valued sincerity above all, started to lose himself in the process. Then came the breaking point. Insiders described it as a mutual decision, but those close to Jay knew it wasn't easy. The BBC's restructuring of its lifestyle programming brought in new management, and with it, a review of all ongoing series. Contracts were reconsidered, budgets adjusted, and creative control reevaluated. Jay's growing discomfort with the network's direction made renewal negotiations tense. Some reports suggested he had walked away, others that he had been quietly phased out. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Either way, when Jay Blades left the repair shop, it was clear that something beautiful had come to an end. The heart of the barn had stopped beating. For fans, the announcement was a shock. The repair shop without Jay felt unthinkable. His absence from new episodes was immediately noticeable. Social media filled with confusion and sadness. "The show just isn't the same," one viewer wrote. Jay brought soul to it. Without him, it feels empty. Others speculated about what might have gone wrong, demanding answers from the BBC. But the network's official response was carefully worded, describing his exit as a new chapter and wishing him well in future endeavors. What they didn't say spoke louder than what they did. There was no farewell special, no final episode to honor his contribution, just a quiet disappearance. A silence that left fans with more questions than closure. Behind the scenes, however, Jay was dealing with far more than public reaction. His decision to step away came during a period of personal strain. Those close to him said he needed time to focus on his mental health, to rebuild his family life, and to rediscover his passion for craftsmanship without the constant pressure of cameras. He spent months away from public view, returning to his roots in community work. He began mentoring young people again, teaching the same repair skills that once saved him. He found solace in small, quiet acts of creation, the kind of untelevised magic that had always defined who he truly was. But for a man who had become a national figure, disappearing completely wasn't easy. Interviews surfaced where Jay hinted at his reasons without ever confirming the full story. "There comes a point," he said, "where you have to decide if what you're doing is feeding your soul or draining it." It was clear those words came from experience, and while he remained respectful toward the BBC and his former colleagues, his tone carried a quiet sadness, the kind that comes from realizing that something you loved has changed beyond recognition. Even Anderson Cooper, in a segment about burnout in public life, referenced Jay's journey as an example of how emotional labor in television often goes unseen. "We forget," Cooper said, "that empathy is work, and some people give more of it than they ever get back." It was a poignant reflection of Jay's reality. The man who had built a career out of repairing broken objects had given so much of himself to others that he'd forgotten to preserve his own well-being. In the months following his departure, the repair shop continued to air, but the shift was undeniable. New faces joined, the tone evolved, and the magic, while still present, felt different. It was as though the soul of the show had been carefully lifted out and replaced with something slightly colder, slightly more produced. Viewers who once tuned in for comfort began to sense the change. Ratings held steady for a while, but fan engagement dipped. The community that had once surrounded Jay's warmth fractured, divided between nostalgia for the past and acceptance of the new. As for Jay, he slowly re-emerged into the public eye, not as a celebrity host, but as a craftsman again. He launched local workshops, gave talks about resilience, and used his platform to promote mental health awareness. He focused on smaller television projects, documentaries about craftsmanship, personal growth, and education. Yet, despite his ongoing work, it was clear that the repair shop had left a lasting mark on him. In interviews, when asked if he'd ever return, he would smile softly and say, "Never say never. But sometimes a chapter closes for a reason." It was a line that carried both peace and pain. The tragedy of Jay Blades' story lies not in scandal or controversy, but in something more human: exhaustion, disillusionment, and the quiet heartbreak of watching something pure become commercialized. He entered television to share his love of craftsmanship and connection, but in the end, the industry demanded more than anyone could give. For years, Jay reminded viewers that everything broken could be mended, but when it came to himself, the repairs required time, space, and silence, things television rarely offers. Today, Jay remains a respected figure. His contributions to British culture and his advocacy for mental health continue to inspire. Yet fans can't help but feel the loss. The repair shop was never just about antiques. It was about healing, about the idea that what's damaged isn't ruined forever. And Jay embodied that belief better than anyone. His departure symbolized something larger, the fragility of goodness in an industry built on appearances. Behind every polished surface lies wear and tear, and sometimes the cracks are too deep to hide. As years go by, reruns of The Repair Shop still air on quiet Sunday afternoons. Viewers still cry when a clock ticks again or when a child's toy finds new life. And somewhere in those scenes, Jay's spirit lingers. His laughter, his gentle words, his belief in people, they've become part of the show's DNA. Even if he never returns, his influence will never truly fade. Because Jay didn't just restore furniture, he restored faith in kindness, in patience, and in the beauty of small things. But for those who wonder whether he'll ever take up that familiar role again, the truth is bittersweet. Jay has hinted that he has found peace away from the glare of television. The fame, the pressure, the expectations, they all came at a cost. In one of his last interviews, he said, "Sometimes the most important repair you can make is the one inside yourself." It's a line that perfectly captures the essence of his journey. The man who once mended the world's treasures has finally chosen to mend his own heart. The real reason Jay Blades' career ended then isn't scandalous or sensational. It's painfully ordinary and deeply human. It ended because he gave everything he had, and when there was nothing left to give, he chose to step away. In a world that often confuses productivity with worth, that decision was both brave and necessary. He didn't fall from grace. He simply decided that his peace was worth more than his fame. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson the repair shop ever taught. That true restoration begins when you stop pretending everything is unbroken. As the credits roll on Jay's chapter, one thing remains certain: the world could use more people like him. People who fix, who care, who see value in the forgotten. Jay Blades may have walked away from the barn, but he'll forever be remembered as the craftsman who showed Britain that love, patience, and a little bit of care can bring even the most shattered things back to life. His career may have ended, but his legacy, like the heirlooms he restored, endures.